Okay. So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the OECD. If you can please take your seat, we are about to start. And to start this sixth Competition Open Day, we will hear a video from the Secretary General, Mr. Mathias Cormann, who unfortunately could not be here with us today. So we can start the video.
Distinguished guests, ambassadors, colleagues, friends all, a very warm welcome to this sixth annual OECD Competition Open Day. The OECD is a global hub for competition policy. Our recommendations set the standard for effective competition law enforcement and advocacy frameworks. Our global and regional fora bring together competition agencies from around the world to discuss emerging challenges and market dynamics. And our research and policy analysis helps jurisdictions compare their approaches and identify best practices. The OECD Competition Open Day is an opportunity to share the results of this work over the past year with a broader audience of competition enforcers, private practitioners, and academics across the globe. Last year, our work helped competition agencies and policymakers optimize their contributions to a broad range of economic reform priorities. First, when it comes to strengthening medium-term global growth prospects. Effective competition policy promotes innovation, efficiency, and consumer welfare by fostering a level playing field in markets. It encourages businesses to strive for excellence and drives down prices, benefiting consumers and promoting economic growth. By preventing anti-competitive practices such as monopolies and cartels, competition policy ensures fair market conditions and encourages new entrants and small businesses to thrive. This leads to increased productivity, investment, and job creation, helping to drive global growth. Our interim economic outlook released on 5 February projects modest global growth through 2025 at rates well below historical averages. So we need effective competition policy to help tackle both anti-competitive conduct and regulatory restrictions so we can unleash stronger productivity, dynamism, and growth as part of an overall growth agenda. Our policy analysis on enhancing cartel detection, deterrence, and prosecution last year will help competition agencies optimize their contributions to these objectives by ensuring their enforcement tools reflect the latest in investigative best practices and peer learning. We also helped policymakers identify pro-competitive, pro-growth regulatory reforms to unleash growth, for example, through our competition market studies of Ukraine's electricity sector and Tunisia's banking and tourism sectors. Second, on encouraging innovation through competitive pressures. Innovation will be central to boosting lagging productivity, responding to labour shortages caused by the ageing of our populations, among others, and enabling the sustainable transformation of our energy and transportation systems. Our policy analysis and roundtable discussions last year helped identify how competition enforcement interventions can protect and encourage innovation in markets, for example, by requiring divestitures of research and development assets during mergers to protect future product market competition. Third, on enhancing not just the strength of economic growth, but also its quality. By keeping markets open to new players, competition enhances equality of opportunity and can even be a tool for tackling gender inequality. The OECD's new gender-inclusive competition toolkit provides guidance on how competition agencies can apply a gender lens in assessing the impact of mergers or potential anti-competitive conduct on markets. This guidance can help uncover competition problems that have a disproportionate impact on female consumers or entrepreneurs, and which may be obscured in aggregate analysis. Our analysis on the consumer welfare standard in competition law this year will help competition policymakers decide how best to deliver these benefits, including whether competition agencies need new mandates to leverage competition law for high-quality growth. Fourth, on seizing the benefits of the digital transformation while managing the associated competition risks. Digitalization has reinvigorated competition in some markets by cutting down intermediary costs and equipping consumers with better information. However, competition agencies are also facing the challenge of addressing risks of entrenched market power and anti-competitive conduct. Tackling these risks may require new analytical approaches and indeed new regulatory frameworks. Different jurisdictions are taking different approaches to this challenge, and so it will be critical for policymakers to learn from each other's experiences on what has worked and what hasn't exactly worked as well as intended. With our inventory for the G7 on new rules for digital markets and our policy analysis on digital mergers and algorithmic competition, we are helping to inform that conversation. We look forward to sharing with you our detailed findings on these topics and to build on these insights in the year ahead with new analysis on the impact of artificial intelligence on competitive dynamics in markets, new digital regulatory frameworks being proposed across the world, and how to ensure industrial policy is pro-competitive at a time when interest is growing in using industrial policy to boost growth and economic resilience. In closing, competition is a key element of the economic policy toolkit. The OECD will continue to help competition agencies and policymakers ensure our competition policy frameworks are as effective as they can be and as we need them to be to drive high-quality growth, innovation, and opportunity. Thank you and best wishes for some good conversations today.
Okay, so thank you to our Secretary General for his remarks, and welcome to all of you, speakers, colleagues of all competition commissions, our guest ambassadors. I see the Italian ambassador here, and welcome to this 2024 Competition Open Day. Now, this is, as also Alessandro mentioned in the introduction, this is another edition, and this is a good opportunity for the OECD to open our doors to the global competition policy community and share our work on competition issues over the past year with a broader audience. And also welcome to all the people who are following online. And we are particularly pleased today to host as keynote speakers President Professor Mario Monti and then Clare Lombardelli, our OECD chief economist. Now, here in my brief introduction, I would like to offer some reflections on the themes that we will cover in the 4 panel discussions today, before saying a few words about the launch of our competition trends report 2024. Now, I think we can all agree on the relevance of competition policy as a tool for achieving important economic objectives, as also Mathias has just outlined. And we work closely in our directorate obviously with the economic department and also with the other NC colleagues from all directorates. Competition obviously provides better outcomes for consumers in terms of quality, prices, and choice of goods and services. It also provides a powerful incentive for progress on our structural reform priorities by helping to boost the productivity and growth, incentivize efficiency and innovation, and fully harness the benefits of digitalization. Now, we know, however, that competition authorities are operating in a difficult global policy environment today, increasingly difficult. Competition authorities are being pushed to take account of the new policy considerations like the rising market power in digital markets, increasing issues with labor markets, and the role of competition policy in the fight against climate change. These challenges often require competition enforcers to go back to the basics of the overarching goals of competition law and the standards that should be used to apply it. At the same time, competition authorities should also be mindful not to overstep their role. Jean Tirole, our friend and Nobel Prize French economist, he said, "Grasp all, lose all." So we should be careful. Today, actually, in our first panel discussion, we will hear from heads of competition agencies on some of these fundamental considerations. We will revisit whether the consumer welfare standard, which we have all studied, is the right one to get competition enforcement, or is the only one. This is far from being just a technical question. It goes to the core of identifying the role of competition policy in modern economies and societies. Challenges and opportunities raised by innovation, digitalization, and technological progress remain a major area of focus for competition authorities. This is reflected in the work of the OECD Competition Committee, and thank you, Frédéric Geny, who is chairing the committee, and all the colleagues. The committee has hosted a long-standing series of discussions on digital market dynamics to explore the implications of these markets for competition enforcement. In 2023, the committee hosted 3 roundtables on cutting-edge issues such as algorithmic competition, digital mergers, and the role of innovation to support the work of competition authorities and policymakers in promoting more competitive digital markets. And this is a cross-cutting theme, and the roundtable were very interesting also because we shared very diverse experiences. Now, the second, third, and this will be the object of the first panel. So the second, third, and fourth panel discussions today actually will pick up on these 3 themes. The first one will be competition enforcement actually is called to strike a difficult balance in digital markets. So making sure that new technologies are not used to harm consumers or competitors, while avoiding creating a chilling effect of innovation. Innovation, as we know, plays a key role in these markets and is an important aspect of these competitive dynamics. Algorithms, and this will be the third panel, has also gained significant attention in recent years, especially given the rapid advancement in applications of artificial intelligence and machine learning. While algorithms provide many benefits, and this is, we cannot deny it, this is very, very important, they can also reduce competition, given their characteristics. And today, actually, we will hear about the challenges that competition authorities face when assessing their impacts. Likewise, the assessment of digital mergers by competition authorities has been the subject of lively debate in recent years, and our final panel discussion today will explore whether there is a need to rethink traditional theories of harm in competition law to reflect the full spectrum of competitive harm that may result from mergers in digital markets. Now, given the global nature of these and other discussions on innovation, digitalization, and competition policy, actually the OECD plays a key role as a forum for international cooperation and forward-looking policy design. The work of the OECD Competition Committee on competition and regulation in digital market, and the work of our division, has been central to fostering dialogue in high-level meetings in other international fora too, and as Secretary General was mentioning, including the G7 Joint Competition Enforcers and Policymakers Summit in Tokyo last November. The OECD prepared an inventory of reforms introduced to regulate market power in digital markets to support discussion at the summit, together with an analytical note with high-level comparisons across jurisdictions. I would encourage you, you all, to have a look at these materials if you haven't done already. And this work, I'm happy to say, will continue under the Italian G7 presidency. Now, before I conclude, let me also say that I'm pleased to announce the release of the 5th edition of our OECD Competition Trends Report today, and you can find it here and also online. The report actually presents a unique insight into global competition trends based on data from 77 OECD and non-OECD jurisdictions. It's also a unique source of information to support informed policymaking on competition law issues and policy. This year's edition focuses on merger control, presenting actually jurisdiction-specific data and trends in merger prohibitions from the participating jurisdiction. So let me conclude. So distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, so thank you once again for joining us here and also virtually. The room here is full, and for your interest actually in a continued dialogue on effective competition policy, which in turn will help us to achieve more prosperous, dynamic, and innovative economies and societies. So I wish you fruitful discussion today and encourage you all to continue to engage with OECD work on competition. Thank you. And now it's my great privilege and honor to invite Professor Mario Monti, Senator for Life of Italy, former EU Commissioner of Competition, as many of you remember and know, but also Commissioner for Internal Market, Financial Service and Tax Policy, and former Prime Minister of Italy, to deliver his keynote address. President Monti, we regret that you were unable to travel to Paris due to a last-minute issue, but we are delighted to have you join virtually. So, Mr. President, the floor is yours. You are online. I spoke with you. Where are you? Yes, Mario, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Carmine. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored by this invitation of the OECD and delighted to be with you, at least online today. As the Secretary General and as Mr. Di Noia as well underlined, competition is extremely important for structural reforms, for economic growth of countries, but also for the quality of growth, etc. As we know, competition does not only have friends, it has, for very good reasons from their point of view, many adversaries and enemies. And in any such situation, it's very important that in order to be effective, in order not to be prevailed upon, and in order to deploy its crucial economic but also social role, the competition authorities should be able to have a community of competition values and a community where there is cohesion, where there is complicity on occasions, which does not prevent also some healthy degree of competition on who tries to be the best among the competition authorities. This is a legitimate objective for everybody. When I last intervened at the OECD, that was, I believe, on the occasion of an opening speech to the 2015 OECD Competition Forum, I stressed that those were years and would continue to be years in which probably the main threat would have been populism in one word, including the trend in all societies and political systems to look mainly at short-term effects of policy decisions rather than on the longer term. And this approach also neglects the indirect effects of decisions. So, and I went on to say, however, some institutions are focused on the long-term and indirect effects. The OECD is the temple of the long-term and the agent of bringing the long-term to bear on decision-making in member countries. And I'm glad to say, many years after 2015, that the competition community across the world has by and large remained strong, on many occasions renewed and enhanced its strength. And I believe that the role of the OECD, not necessarily as a unifier, but as a catalyst of best practices and best values in competition policy, has been extremely important. And I would like here to pay tribute to the guru of all of us, if I may still consider myself a bit as a member of the competition policy family, that is Frédéric Cheny, whom I've seen in the first row. Hello, Frédéric. I am a live senator, but you are much more than that, because you are the live worldwide competition guru. Congratulations, and go on doing that very, very useful role for the world and the OECD. Now, today is the competition open day, which stresses even more the fact that more and more people, not just the competition authorities, have hopefully to be embraced in the cultural value of competition and be ready to support them. I remember what the Bundesbank, the Central Bank of Germany, was saying when it was extraordinarily effective, unlike many other central banks in the 70s and 80s, in keeping inflation so low. They said, well, we do that, but in Germany, the strongest element of anti-inflationary policy is the public opinion, because the public opinion has faith in the Bundesbank and support its sometimes bold and courageous policies to fight inflation. Well, here, similarly, it's very, very important that the competition culture becomes spread around as much as possible. And I was thinking, preparing for this short set of remarks, I was thinking about 25 years ago when I had the privilege of being actively in the competition world as EU competition commissioner at a time when seed decisions and fundamental decisions were in fact made as how to construct a competition community. By the way, in the following panel, Olivier Garçon will take the floor. I remember that already in those days, Olivier, working with my predecessor, Commissioner Van Miert, and then with a series of EU competition commissioners, has been and is being a pillar of the EU competition policy, very much looking at the international convergence. Well, when in those years, without being aware, we have put the foundation of what is today the competition policy community. We had two sides to this architectural effort. One was the transatlantic side, because of course much of the competition business was taking place in Washington and Brussels, much more than today in relative terms. And we had occasionally divergences, some of them rather visible and taken up by the press. But we wanted, for the benefit of consumers and of businesses as well, to develop as much as possible coherent approaches. And I remember, in particular, one rather awkward day for me personally at the OECD in the competition in one of the meetings of the competition forum, I think it was called, when the representative of the US Justice Department publicly criticized me very much. We were both there for the negative decision that was 2001 that we had taken days before on the GE Honeywell merger. And It was a vibrant debate conducted practically in the public. But all this, in retrospect, was very healthy because we were able to, at the same time, fight our arguments on the basis of their strength, we as well as our American colleagues, and moderate our vibrancy in debating when it came to building a system transatlantically that would be as coherent as possible. And we took on, Olivier will remember, many aspects from our American friends, particularly in terms of more economic analysis, and he and others will be talking later on the consumer welfare as a standard. And the Americans also took up several elements from our methods and approaches. And the outgrowth of the transatlantic cooperation was, in those years, the creation of the ICN, the International Competition Network, that most of you will know, that has been doing, I would say, a fantastic job ever since, putting to rest, at least for the foreseeable future, the idea of having a hard convergence of competition legislation, which would have been, I would say, impossible, to the benefit of a soft but very useful convergence in culture, in methods, etc., which has permeated the way of operating of, I think, much more than 100 now competition authorities around the world, giving much strength, I believe, to the identity and self-confidence, especially of competition authorities in the emerging countries, in small countries where they could not fly on a previously established legacy of reputation and respect. The fact of being members of such a worldwide respected community, I think, helped them to create and preserve their independence vis-à-vis the political forces in their countries. And interestingly, at the same time, we were considering what to do in terms of convergence within Europe. There, the situation was indeed almost entirely different, because in Europe, there has been a hard convergence. Just consider that in 1958, when the European Community was created, out of the 6 original member states, just one of them, Germany, had, and it was also on day one, in January 1st, 1958, when the community was created, only Germany had a national competition authority, the Bundeskartellamt. All the others didn't. That's why Brussels, not out of hunger for supremacy, but out of necessity, became the point of destination of all competition agreements among companies and so on. There was a high degree of centralization of even relatively small cases. But after many years, around the turn of the century, we felt that there had been, in that way, a sufficient convergence of cultures after all countries had their own national competition authority, that we could afford to devolve, to do some decentralization, something that the critics say that we Eurocrats would never be prepared to do. And I thought, let's do this reform so it will be to the benefit of the image and the perception of the whole European Commission, not just the competition department. And beginning, if I'm not wrong, May 1st, 2004, in coincidence with the enlargement of the EU, national competition authorities were given much greater responsibilities, of course, in a network ensuring mutual vigilance and monitoring, with the Commission always at the center. Not only that, it was not just a geographical devolution, but it was also how should I say, an institutional devolution, because the courts, the tribunals, were previously not empowered to do competition cases in their judiciary activity. They became empowered to do so. And so we felt that after that, the whole battery of competition enforcement instruments would be stronger and better deployed over the whole territory. I think my minutes are elapsing, maybe have elapsed. I could remember so many anecdotes and important facts around these trends, and also around individual cases which marked the progress of the competition authorities. But I will stop here. Let me just underline also, with the hat that I subsequently had of head of a government, how important, although on occasions how unpleasant and a bit annoying maybe for political authorities to have the continuous stimulus of the competition authorities. So lucky you who are the protagonists, the active protagonists of this rather silent and discreet, in a world of noise, a useful, often useless and counterproductive noise. You, competition family worldwide, are doing an immensely important social function for the benefit of the economies. And unlike so many other agents of the political arena, you in fact fight and are often criticized for that, for the new generations which are not there, which cannot vote, which cannot hold manifestations in the street. So please go on doing this for all of us in the society. And I congratulate once again the OECD for keeping you as united as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you, President Monti. I think, for a fantastic, speech. I was, listening. Sometimes I always say, I'm very boring, getting old. Study the past, if you want to divine the future. A famous quote. I think that this is really, is really very true. Listening to you, actually, President Monti, reminded us. We found a picture, thanks to the WikiLeaks file of Antonio Capobianco, of this meeting in 2001 here at the Competition Forum. We sent to Professor Monti when he was here, and there's a hot discussion on G. Honeywell, case. And I think it was, very important. Maybe after the case, as you mentioned, President Monti, let me abuse a bit of my position of being now having the microphone, Clare, if you don't mind. But just it's a great opportunity to have you here. And especially after that, and you mentioned the strong dialogue that you saw in that case, but maybe from there it emerged the need to have more convergence. And where maybe you see quickly, where are the areas where maybe there is more difficulty, or we need more efforts to have more convergence, especially maybe, and this is a sub-question maybe, given that now we see, due also to, I would say, geopolitical evolution situation, also unfortunate events that we saw in the last years, I would say, stronger industrial policy, which also may have a lot of justification. We also have a lot of work on foreign direct investment. I saw before also my other colleagues working in this area. So where you see you said the area where we need more efforts, improvement, also given this situation. If I give you back the floor, President.
Thank you very much. I'll be quicker. Well, definitely the digital, and this is not a secret, digital platforms. You know, when we dealt with the Microsoft case in the EU after the rather limited success of the Justice Department in the US on Microsoft, that was a time when we were told as competition authorities, don't bother about the new economy, as it was then called, the internet, because it will find its own equilibrium. You will make interventions, if you do make interventions, that will not be rational, because we don't know yet what the effects are, etc., etc. Well, under that standard, I should have told my people at DigiComp, let's look at Microsoft intellectually. Let's not take any action on that. I think it would have been a serious mistake, because that case showed how quickly the market dominance that valuably and with merit a company may acquire in one market can be leveraged upon on neighboring markets and foreclose the development of innovation by smaller, partly different actors. And just a note, among the companies that came to Brussels to urge me and my colleagues to go ahead and to be tough vis-à-vis Microsoft was Google, was Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google. And then, of course, there was a turning of positions, because Google, for its own merits, emerged as such a superpower. Then now it is in favor of looking at them carefully and rigorously that there is a visit of many European and non-European companies to Brussels. I'm sure I'm no longer there. So, Carmine, now the EU and others have done a lot of legislation and regulation concerning the digital platforms. I think it is important to coordinate that as much as possible. With one note, though, if we talk political economy, because most digital platforms are based in the US, it is maybe a little easier for the EU competition authorities to be real independent and rigorous, I don't say tough, vis-à-vis the digital platforms than it is for the US authorities. And that's why I note from distance that there has been recently a strong growing interest on the part of the US antitrust agencies to work with Europe, to follow also the European lead, if I may say so, in this point. And this is crucially important because, by the way, the G7 was mentioned. When we go to the G7, the G20, we believe we have there the controllers of the world in the sense of the most important states. That is not true any longer, because more important than several countries in the G7 and in the G20 are digital platforms. They are non-states, they are non-territorial entities, but of course on the costs and benefits of individuals, of companies, of civic societies, of the electoral independence, etc., they have an enormous role. Much more quickly on your second point, relation to industrial policy. I've never been personally against industrial policy, although it has given substance to a very interesting war, almost of religion, between competition and industrial policy. All I'm saying to people when we discuss this point is, for example, in the case of Europe, why not? Europe, like any other state or set of states in the process of integration, should compete in order to have stronger companies worldwide. And the EU has so many political, economic policy instruments and legal policy instruments that can try to do this. I only say be careful, because if you try to use some competition policy tools to achieve this objective, you may be disappointed. For example, if Europe, I said many times, try to use the merger control instrument in order to create a European champion, a bit artificially, in the sense that you authorize it closing one eye or half of one eye relative to the internationally more or less agreed competition standards, then of course you may have the benefit of seeing a European champion, maybe in the rail industry, to pick one example, be born. But if that champion is born, it will be in order to compete in all other key markets. So you will need also the authorization of the Justice Department or the FTC in Washington and of the competition authorities in Tokyo, in Beijing, etc. And you cannot expect, you can expect a rigorous and fair treatment by the others, but you cannot expect that they also put a bit of favor because that entity is a European champion. So if the EU authorities had tilted their evaluations in order to bless the European champion, it's rather likely that that champion would not be authorized in other countries. And what would be the ultimate consequence? We don't need to speculate. We mentioned several times this morning the GE Honeywell case, when in 2001 we blocked the GE Honeywell merger for good reasons under our laws. Then, of course, they could not operate had they merged in the broad EU market. And that led, even in the US, GE and Honeywell to stop, not to go ahead, not to consummate their merger. So Europeans who want European champions, go ahead, it's a legitimate goal. Don't ask the competition authorities, if I can say so, to use slightly distorted instruments, because it would not enhance the image of objectivity of European authorities, and cynically speaking, may also most likely not have the desired effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Presidente. I guess thank you also on behalf of Frédéric, is here, sitting here, Olivier, but also I think all friends of yours, Benoit Coiré is here. And so thank you, it really was very, very important, interesting to hear your views. And now let me turn to our second keynote speech, and it's a great pleasure to to have Clare Lombardelli, our OECD chief economist, formerly, chief economic advisor, UK Treasury, and I would say I'm happy and sad and as you probably read on the press last week, that she has been appointed Deputy Governor of Bank of England from July 1st. So compliments also for this, Clare. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Hello everyone. It's lovely to be here amongst a great group of competition enthusiasts, or as Professor Monti told us, competition friends. I'm going to talk briefly about the digital economy and the impacts of that for competition. I know that's something you're coming back to later on this morning. So the digital economy now impacts our lives more than ever before. It's completely integrated into nearly every aspect of how we live our lives. It shapes how we consume, how we communicate, how we inform ourselves and keep ourselves entertained. The development of intelligent algorithms, of foundation models, the emergence of new digital business models, and the massive amounts of data that are generated by the increasing adoption of online products and services are transforming the way in which economic activity is happening. And, of course, the advent of artificial intelligence promises further sweeping transformations there, particularly generative AI. This digitisation, of course, could have very long-lasting impacts on economic growth. Doing lots of work on that here at the OECD. It should foster much more productive use of existing resources. And productivity growth, obviously, is key to inclusive economic growth, and it's the only way, really, to sustain economic growth over the medium and long term. But, of course, what we're actually seeing across OECD economies is productivity growth slowing. And it has slowed over the last 2 decades. Digital technologies provide some promise to revive it. Their impact is likely to be not just a one-off static change to the level of growth and the way in which we produce and consume, but also a dynamic impact. It's likely to change the way in which that happens over time, with innovation boosting potential offered by these technologies. But of course, only if we get this right. And while the digital transformation holds lots of opportunities and is very encouraging, it is encountering roadblocks in terms of its implementation and in terms of how it is actually impacting economies and their ability to grow. We are witnessing now a decline in the share of young, fast-growing, innovative firms. So as technology improves and provides more opportunities, we're seeing fewer and fewer fast-growing young firms in the economy. We're seeing a rise in less productive firms over time, and we're seeing a growing productivity gap between what's happening at the productivity frontier, the most productive firms, and the laggards behind. Why? Well, a whole host of reasons. Actually, we could talk about. That's a different speech and a different conversation. But one of them is actually about competition, which I'll talk about now. Digital markets in particular have these very strong network effects, durable data feedback loops, and large economies of scale and scope. And that, of course, presents very unique challenges for competition, as you know well, and the efficient working of market mechanisms. Once a firm builds a substantial user base, network externalities and data-driven product customization make it very, very hard for competitors to challenge that dominance, to break into that market. The data advantage allows firms to further lock in consumers in a large, personalised, sort of single brand ecosystem. We're all very aware of those that we're involved in and participants in. And the barriers to entry, scale, scope, network effects, data feedback, as I mentioned, then become so formidable that for rivals, it's really difficult to innovate or to provide a more efficient service and to challenge those incumbents. So those in turn become entrenched in their dominant positions. They lose the incentives themselves to improve their products and to introduce and innovate and provide new ones. So AI systems are governed by scaling laws. The predictive performance of models and algorithms improves with their scale, and they continually enhance themselves through real-time feedback. These characteristics, of course, continue to accentuate these effects, and so it builds and builds. So what do we need to do? Well, in this landscape, policy intervention is crucial and critical to ensure that the digital economy and AI not only fulfill their potential, but also deliver on those promises of innovation and efficiency, and thereby drive up sustainable growth to the benefit of all of us. For the digital economy to deliver, policymakers need to make sure that these new innovative firms can enter the markets, that they can contest positions and business models of incumbents, and that they can find the resources that they need to grow. And that's a real barrier right now. So for this, we need a number of things. As you know well, we need measures to curb the dominant companies' abusive behaviours and to avoid anti-competitive mergers and to prevent collusive tactics. We need to address these asymmetries in bargaining power and support the growth of startups, which can be strangled by the imposition of exploitative terms and conditions or opaque ranking algorithms that we see. We need to identify and address the sources of consumer lock-in. They're not always obvious, and of the manipulation of consumer behaviour, so that we ensure the freedom of choice for people, real choice, and that they can, and to promote a dynamic marketplace, encouraging firms to differentiate and to offer different things to consumers. We need copyright regimes that strike a balance between preserving incentives for innovation, particularly as these costs increase, and also safeguarding the rights of investors. But also we need to ensure that resources are not stuck in unproductive uses, and we need to streamline bankruptcy procedures so that we can be freeing up valuable human resource, financial resource, and make sure that can shift across the economy. And last but not least, talk about this a lot elsewhere in the OECD, we need a dynamic labour market which facilitates people and the skilled workers that we need in these industries to move across firms, to promote knowledge transfers, to promote innovation. And we see increasingly in some jurisdictions arrangements that are discouraging labour mobility, such as non-compete agreements, and these need to be just limited so that workers can find new jobs, they can move to expanding industries to the benefit of themselves, their families and all of us. Obviously, as you know well, in this context, competition agencies are doing huge amounts of work and playing an absolutely critical role and a pivotal role, first and foremost as the enforcers of antitrust and merger laws, and through that can prevent monopolistic practices, avoiding acquisitions that may quash emerging competitors and innovative ideas. We've heard some great examples of that in the past. That is going to be an increasingly important thing going forward, given these changes in digital markets. Given your expertise in understanding market dynamics, competition agencies can identify regulatory barriers that stifle entry and can recognise the structural features of digital and AI markets that might hinder contestability. You can look at this in a different way to the rest of us with that knowledge and expertise. And of course, you can leverage your advocacy tools to steer the policy debate and highlight the regulatory interventions and shape the landscape that is needed to foster competition and innovation in this emerging world. So I would invite you to use the day today as an opportunity to reflect on all of these policy challenges, to talk to each other about how you can collaborate in addressing these issues and unlocking the genuine, a huge positive potential for all of us that comes from digital transformation, and doing that in a way that we can all prosper. So look, thank you very much. We need you.
So we need you, but we will miss you, Clare, but we are proud also that you have been at the OECD. Thank you very much. Actually, I will not abuse again because we are already late on my position, but when you talk about network externalities, you remind me, I worked nearly 30 years ago. My PhD was on actually implicit mergers among stock exchanges and network effects and liquidity, trust liquidity. So great. So thank you really very much. I mean, this has been a fantastic. We are running a bit late, so I have to, apologies for the speakers now in the next session. But I hope that you liked it, and thanks to you, Clare, again, Professor Monti, Matthias. So this brings our opening session to a close, and I would like to invite now the speakers of the first panel on the consumer welfare standard enforcement decisions, so to take their places on stage, and I will leave you in the capable hands of our head of competition division, Ori Schwartz, who will moderate the first discussion. So thank you very much.